The Bahrain Grand Prix has well and truly delivered once again, and it was a top quality opener that should set us up for a cracking 2021 season. The prospect of a Hamilton versus Verstappen championship battle is well and truly on this year, and round one has gone in the favour of Lewis Hamilton. But you can guarantee that whilst Hamilton and Mercedes have won this battle, the war is far from over this season. Here's my 5 things that we learned from the 2021 Bahrain Grand Prix. Let's have a look. My name's Andy, and this is Behind the Drive. When races have different strategies, they are better. Now I know I haven't exactly worded this one particularly well, but first up I have a green box for different race strategies. We knew this coming into the race as we've had a number of cars out of position with the likes of Perez, Vettel and Tsunoda out of their standard starting positions on the grid. We had drivers up and down the grid choosing to start on different tyres, which adds to the question over who will end up being on the right tyres at the right time. We then have the different strategy choices from Red Bull and Mercedes. With Perez pretty much out of the race and being forced to start from the pit lane, Mercedes chose to put the pressure on Verstappen by bringing in Lewis early, and nobody knew who was on the right or wrong strategy until the final stint and the closing stages. But it was up and down the grid that we saw some incredible battles, from Norris pulling together a cracking race, Tsunoda coming well through the field on his debut, and Perez carving his way to 5th after starting in the pit lane. It was one of the best season opening weekends that I think we've ever seen, which culminated in a final stint where Verstappen was hunting down Hamilton for the final 15 laps, with Lewis on tyres that were 10 laps older. And the battle lasted 2 or 3 laps before Verstappen did finally overtake Hamilton, but it was off the track at the exit of turn 4. So he had to give it back and go for it again, but he never really looked the same after that moment and didn't manage to get past the Mercedes car. It came right down to the wire, and I love the way that this season has started, and whilst normally Red Bull find themselves behind to then come back through the season, they are right at the front in 2021. So it's going to be an amazing battle between the two front-running teams this season. And whilst it may have been a bit lucky for Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton to take the win in Bahrain, it was a cracking result and shows just how much they're going to have to push this season in order to win the championship. But more on that later in the video. So that's why my first green box of the season goes to the different strategies that the two teams ran. It was a great race and hopefully is a sign of things to come this season. Ferrari have recovered some of their losses. The next point that we've learned from the Grand Prix is that Ferrari seem to have recovered at least some, if not all, of their power losses from 2019 to 2020. They've really delivered this year to the extent that their two drivers actually managed to take a 1-2 in Quali 2, admittedly on soft tyres. But given the two drivers managed to pull that lap out of the bag, it says a lot about the Italian team's prospects going into 2021. So for me, I think Ferrari deserves a green box for this race, especially given Bahrain is a circuit at which power is absolutely crucial. In the race, Charles Leclerc, again on soft tyres, managed to have a cracking start and found himself challenging the Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas for a while, which was great to see. Both Ferraris did well through the race when you compare it to their performance of last year. And you can see that it's the power unit doing the business, as the Alfa Romeo cars have also made a great step forward this season. Both Giovinazzi and Raikkonen had a cracking race, and could well be fighting with the midfield cars at times this season, as they finished 12th and 11th respectively. So it seems like the Ferrari engineers have recovered some, if not all, of their power unit losses last year, and they've done a great job to be in a position where they could well challenge McLaren for 3rd place this season as it stands. Although I have no doubt that those other midfield teams will be leading at different tracks just as they did last year. Honda has delivered, from a power perspective. I think the next thing that I've learned from this weekend is that Honda has well and truly delivered on their word and potentially has the best power unit on the grid this year for the Red Bull and AlphaTauri cars. It's amazing to see just how far they've come since the McLaren Honda days back in 2015. They even accelerated the development of this year's engine as it was originally scheduled for 2022, and on the face of it, it certainly looks worth it. By the looks of things so far, they're thoroughly deserving of a green box for their performance this weekend. In qualifying, both Red Bull and AlphaTauri had a driver fail to make it through to Q3, but this was actually due to the tyre choices both of the new drivers in those teams, Sergio Perez and Yuki Tsunoda, tried to get through on medium tyres, as their teammates did. But what the teams both proved in Q1 in particular was that the Honda-powered cars have speed. Both AlphaTauri drivers were high up in the speed traps, being 3rd and 5th in that metric, and the speed of both the Honda-powered teams has put them in a position to fight for the championship in their final season in the sport as a power unit provider. Either way, They've set the Red Bull outfit up well to inherit one of, if not the best power units on the Formula 1 grid in the next few seasons, as they bought the intellectual property of the Japanese manufacturer. In the race, both Red Bull and AlphaTauri were rapid, and although Perez and Gasly didn't exactly have a seamless Sunday evening race, they did show what the Honda power unit is capable of. But it was Tsunoda for me that really impressed. After a disappointing qualifying session and first lap, he made a great comeback to come through the field to take 9th place, scoring 2 points on his debut. His late-breaking moves on the likes of Alonso, Raikkonen and Russell all reminded me of some of the late-breaking moves that Daniel Ricciardo made in that Red Bull when he was there a few years ago, so I think he has a bright future in that team. And of course you have Max Verstappen, who was struggling with a differential issue throughout the race, but did a great job only just to lose out during the final stint. It was a shame for him not to take his first win of the season, but I do believe he has the car under him now to challenge throughout this year. My worry though is if this power unit is up to scratch from a reliability point of view. It was reported that between FP3 and qualifying, Pierre Gasly's power unit required a replacement control electronics and energy store, which were both parts that teams only had 2 of last season. So if they're already facing issues with those parts after just a handful of sessions, then it could well result in a real dilemma for all of those Honda power unit cars, and could lose out later in the year if those parts aren't reliable. Then to build more weight to this, Sergio Perez's car needed a new control electronics and energy store again whilst in Parc Fermé between quali and the race. Christian Horner said that this was a precautionary measure as Honda didn't like the look of the data, and it hardly looks great when Perez's car slowed to a halt on the formation lap and he needed to restart the whole thing. To have 2 Honda power units that needed the same replacement parts at the first race of the season really doesn't bode well for the power unit reliability for 2021. If it keeps up, it could well result in grid drops throughout the season for all 4 drivers. So I'm actually going to switch the Honda's box to amber, as whilst the power is well and truly there for this season, the reliability could well have taken a hit as a result. Mercedes has work to do. The next point for me is that Mercedes have well and truly got work to do going into this season. The new regulations have undoubtedly hit the low rate cars more than the higher rate cars. And even though Mercedes leave this race as the Constructors and Drivers' Championship leaders after their double podium, it was far from plain sailing for the Silver Arrows in Bahrain. But for me, despite taking the win, it's an amber box for Mercedes, as for the first time in the turbo hybrid era, they don't have the best car on outright pace at the first race of the season. I think qualifying showed it all, with Verstappen taking pole by 0.4 of a second from Lewis Hamilton. It shows that they're on the back foot. And when you think about where this team was in testing, I think they'd probably have taken that qualifying result. It does seem like they've got a handle on their issues, with Toto Wolff saying publicly that the developments are on the way, but it doesn't exactly look great. It was Lewis that won this race today, or perhaps Red Bull and Verstappen losing it, but they'll be thanking their lucky stars this evening that they have taken the win here. Hamilton's ability to manage the tyres took him to the next level, as I thought he would be a sitting duck in those closing stages to Verstappen. So we'll all be hoping for more races like this one, but Mercedes absolutely leave Bahrain with work still to do. Norris will be happy with that. My final point for the 2021 Bahrain Grand Prix will be that the McLaren team have delivered a great result again, and it was Norris that took 4th place for the team as he ended up getting past the likes of Ricciardo and Leclerc through the race. So it's a green box for Norris and McLaren after Bahrain. It was a great result for the team, who seemed to have taken a real step forward with their new power unit switch to Mercedes engines for this season. Both Norris and Ricciardo look like they could well be pushing each other throughout the 2021 season and bring the team to new levels. It's a driver pairing that certainly look like they're trying to suss each other out, and it's Norris that comes away from this race 6 points ahead of Ricciardo. Norris's moves towards the start of the race were really impressive, and it was that time that he pulled from Leclerc that then protected him from being vulnerable to the quicker Red Bull car of Perez behind him in the closing stages. The McLaren team seem to have solidified their place as the 3rd best car on the grid, and so it'll be interesting to see how they get on throughout the year at different circuits. So, that's my 5 things we learned from the 2021 Bahrain race. There are some obvious points that I've missed, from looking at Tsunoda's race debut in more detail, Sebastian Vettel having a dreadful start to life at Aston Martin, and Perez's stunning driver of the day performance to go from the pit lane to 5th position. Let me know your thoughts on the race in the comments, and if you've enjoyed this video and watched this far, then please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more F1 related content in the future.